In this video, we're going to talk about how grains contribute to disease. Well, grains, you see, have been around for centuries, and we know that there are different forms of grains. When the civilizations got closer together and the populations began to stop moving around as we used to do, we began to plant more crops. And more crops really became a cheap source of a lot of food for a lot of people in a close proximity of area. And really, it's not that the grains themselves are so bad, it's the type of grain modification that's really occurred over the course of our history.
What happens when we process grains is we take the hulls and the outer shells off of them, and it increases the surface area of those little fellas. And when you increase surface area, you allow the availability of the hormone insulin to get at those little insulin molecules. Now, when we have processed grains, what does that do to our blood sugar? Our blood sugar goes up. It skyrockets sky high, and then what else is going to go up? That hormone insulin. Insulin and blood sugar have to be friends because blood sugar has to stay normal at all cost. Or we have a condition called diabetes. So grains can be a menace to our system and our processing of blood sugar if we do too many, too much, too long, too strong, and all the time. We have to be careful with the consumption of breads, grains, sugars, and sweet treats.
And understand, too, when Dr. Michele talks about the refinement process, what happens is if you have a kernel of grain, it's been shaved down and it's been exposed on the inner layer. It's called an acellular carbohydrate, meaning the stomach acids and the digestive material can get to it quicker, causing a quicker conversion to that glucose molecule. So it causes that blood sugar to elevate more rapidly than it should with that particular type of carbohydrate. So it's really the refinement process and the overindulgence of grains. When the food pyramid started, we started eating a lot of grains and breads, and now we live in a grain-based, bread-based nutritional program world. You go get the chips and the dip, and then you get the bread, and that's where people go and flock to in these restaurants with this free stuff. Where it's hardest was there's three things that really are very damaging in the grains. There's something called a lectin, gluten, and a phytate.
Gluten actually injures the tight junctions in the intestinal tract. Yes, too much gluten actually causes the tight junctions, which are the barrier in the intestines, to actually come apart. That glue that hooks those cells together starts to leak. We get a leaky gut with too much gluten, and then it exposes our immune system to proteins. So it makes our system sick. It makes our system inflamed. So gluten in grains and bread becomes very inflammatory to the system. Also in grains, we find this protein called lectin.
Well, lectin actually acts as a glyco sort of protein. It actually becomes sticky on or on cell receptors. So when you're talking about cell-to-cell communication, it actually impairs that. And a lot of people don't think about that too much. So that gluten's gone, but you still have lectin and phytates. Lectin still does its number, and it can certainly impair with cell-to-cell communication because of the stickiness of it. That's why really gluten is an answer, but actually lectin's something to keep in mind too.
And the third thing we talked about was phytates. Phytates are kind of like a fiber, and what fiber does in the bowel is it can absorb water and pull things out. Well, phytates can actually bind to minerals, and those phytates can leach minerals out of the system. And if you become minerally deficient, for example, magnesium deficient, your body doesn't relax very well. So relate excessive phytates to mineral deficiencies and symptoms like fatigue, malaise, headache, heart palpitations, mental fogginess. Gluten, phytates, lectins, all found in grains and breads, sugars, grains, and breads. Probably good things to leave out because our immune system starts in our gut. if we're not healthy in the gut, all things kind of tumble downhill.
The gut can get bigger, so if you want to get rid of that roll, don't eat the roll.
Don't eat the roll.